Welcome all to this memorial service for Jim Binkley on this day when the earth restores itself in quiet rain. I'd like to begin by the words of this anonymous poet, which I think fit Jim. She wrote, "How do we take the measure of a man? By inch of waist, or length of leg, or size of shoe, or span of arm? Perhaps by all these things, but more. Within the corners of the mind, the broad dimensions of the soul, and precious heritage of the heart. And our task for love's and friendship's sake is to capture and make plain the quiet strength of him who was and is our friend. And in the gentleness that was like a wreath about his bow, we take it to make it ours. We feel the patient virtues of a life well lived, bequeathed to us." So we light our chalice this morning. In memory and appreciation of Jim Binkley. Just as this flame burns brightly now, may the memories and example of his life continue to illumine our way as we strive in the days and years ahead to live as best and as nobly as we each can. We have gathered on this rather soggy May morning, in this place of peace and remembering, to acknowledge the death of Jim Binkley, one whom we have known and loved. When someone we have cared for die, even after a long and good and productive and meaningful life, family and friends gather with much sorrow in their hearts. At times when we must face death and loss, we need one another's company at occasions such as this one for understanding and support. Just to be together as we are this morning, to look upon one another's faces and greet each other, takes away some of our loneliness and draws our hearts together in the healing which only people can offer to one another. At such occasions, our hearts go out especially to Jim's family, his wife Fran, his children Jessica, John and wife Jen with children Luke and Levi, Kevin with wife Amy, Fran's children Matt and children Andrew, Tabitha, and is it Cassie? Yes, okay. And Matt's fiancée, Katie, also Tanya and Jack are here with us. So we have gathered today in grief and sorrow, but we have more gathered to celebrate a life, to give thanks on this occasion that we knew this wonderful person, and to express our gratitude for the days and years we shared with him. By remembering the best of Jim, and recalling some of his finest qualities, which I think you could see in the video that we showed this morning, by honoring the principles and values and dreams which guided his life, some of Jim's enduring nobility flows into us that we ourselves may be better persons in the days ahead. So we are here for all these things, but the first thing we always must do on memorial occasions is to acknowledge the very real loss that we feel. And to do that, I chose this reading by poet Madeleine L'Engle. The earth will never be the same again. Rock, water, tree, iron share this grief, as distant stars participate in pain. A candle snuffed, a falling star or leaf, a single death. Oh, this particular loss is heaven mourned. For if no angel cried, if this small one was tossed away as dross, the very galaxies would then have lied. How shall we sing our love's song now in this strange land where we are all born to die? Each tree and leaf and star shows how the universe is part of this one cry. Every life is noted and cherished, and nothing loved is ever lost or perished. Jim was more or less the architect of this service, as he was an architect in life. He communicated to Fran and through Fran to me some of the things that he wanted said. In fact, he, as Fran wrote me, Jim outlined what he wanted Fran to put in his memorial service, including some of the music, and she has worked hard, I will point out, to follow this. He was a Bach devotee, therefore the three pieces in this service. And Jim wrote, "My life started with difficulties, but unfolded to be wonderful." He requested this service be, quote, "a true celebration of the privilege of his life, of a life well lived with a Buddhist Unitarian theme." The speaker following Fran will contribute to that Buddhist theme of this service. Jim felt that scouting enabled him to transcend the difficulties in his home life, and he worked hard to achieve competencies in many areas. He attained Eagle Scout. I think you saw the medals up on the screen. The two other scouting awards shown on one of the slides, and spent a lifetime improving himself. Jim served a couple of years in the military as captain, U.S. Army Combat Engineers, in a non-combat unit with time in Korea. He was awarded the Army Accommodation Medal and said at the time to be the Army's highest non-combatant decoration. Jim was delighted that his combat engineer sergeants secretly put him up for this medal, and he asked that this be shared in his memorial service this morning. In their poor English, among other things they wrote, "Captain shows very many deep consideration toward the men and always had time to listen with a lot of emotion and understanding. He has always been courteous, regardless of the problem, personal or professional," unquote. Jim frequently called himself a soldier poet, and near the end of his life, Jim spoke of how grateful he was for never having had to harm anyone. Jim worked for years as an architect at the U.S. Postal Service and was so touched by what a subordinate wrote of him that he asked it be shared at this memorial service. Quote, "You always took responsibility, and none of the other employees ever felt they needed to lie to you. I never feared to suggest or carry out a course of action. Your willingness to take all the blame and give all the credit is unparalleled," unquote. Jim was devoted to his extended family, and I think you could see that in the photographs that we put up. And you probably observed most of them in the slideshow. Perhaps it was confusing because of the numbers. There were Jim's children, John, Kevin, and Jessica, and their partners, Jen, Amy, and Jack, and the grandchildren, Luke and Levi. And there were Fran's children, Jennifer and Matt, and grandchildren, Andu, Cassie, and Tabitha, as well as special friends, Tanya and Katie, as well as other family members. Many are with us today, and others are zooming in from afar. Jim also wanted the following to be shared at his service. On the day he retired in 2009 from the U.S. Postal Service, his stepdaughter Jennifer wrote this, quote, "Here is an inscription chiseled on the facade of the main post office in Washington, D.C. that reminds me so much of how you are as a man and how proud I am to know you. Quote from the plaque. Messenger of sympathy and love, servant of parted friends, consoler of the lonely, bond to the scattered family, enlarger of the common life, carrier of news and knowledge, instrument of trade and industry, promoter of mutual acquaintance, of peace and goodwill among men and nations, unquote. The speakers in this celebration of life today, who you will now hear from, will share about different aspects of Jim's life. And time will be provided before the end of the service for a few of you to share other memories of him. And those of you who are Zooming in this morning should feel free to post your memories in the chat box so that others online can read those. And now we will hear first from Jim's wife, Fran.
Oh, I can. Okay. I'll start by expressing my gratitude to all our friends and family members, Jim's colleagues, caregivers, and church members who reached out with support for both of us during Jim's long illness and beyond. His 3 children were so loyal and supportive to both of us with their weekly calls and periodic visits. Jim's illness included well over a year under hospice and with 24/7 care in our living room, in our very open house, so we were all together all the time. It was a blessing to have this time with him because despite being with Jim for about 30 years, I observed aspects of his personality I otherwise wouldn't have known. I'm sharing some of his last year in this celebration. The celebration of his life today because it revealed and magnified Jim's extraordinary humanity. He was upbeat and had good humor. He never, ever complained, and I think his children can affirm that. And he believed the quality of his life was good. I'm blessed, he said. I'm very happy. I'm not bored. Who would have guessed? I say he was the poster person for death and dying. Jim lived much longer than expected as a result of the exceptional commitment to his well-being from Bai and Caroline, his amazing caregivers who are native to West Africa. Bai had 25 years of experience and found Jim to be extraordinary. And I have to note that Bai didn't remember that the service was today, but I got a note from him this morning, a text, saying, I'm thinking of you, Fran, I hope you're doing well. And I texted him back. I said, do you recall? Now, he would not come to this. He said, I've done that sort of thing, and I won't do it. But so he texted back, and he said, please tell everybody how much I love Jim, Caroline too, and we'll be with you in spirit. So some of the things Bai said about him, and note that Bai and Caroline became like family members to us because they were there for 15 months, day and night. He was so appreciative for everything done for him. He was a gentleman. He made this world a better place. Jim transcended all those Abrahamic religions and things. You'd think you were talking with the Dalai Lama. It's not a mistake to call him a saint. Jim accepted his fate with dignity. And I've got Bai to promise to take care of me someday if I need it. Throughout his illness, Jim read the Christian Science Monitor aloud to Bai, and they discussed all the international news articles in each issue of this premier weekly publication. He actually asked me to try to make a contribution to the Christian Science Monitor, and I spent a long time researching that. I couldn't find how to do that. I'm not sure they take that. Anybody knows, please let me know. They also spent weeks collaborating on architectural and irrigation projects for farmers in the Gambia, the caregiver's West African homeland to which he someday may return. In this regard, Jim used an updated edition of his Catholic University textbook, Heating, Cooling, and Lighting, and flourished as he mentored the caregiver on sustainability in design and construction. This led by to say, Jim had a lot in his big brain. He was brilliant. So if you're aware of anyone who'd be interested in having this textbook replete with multiple tab pages, yellow tabs that Jim put in there, please let me know. It's a giveaway. Although Jim taught architecture courses for many years, he wasn't comfortable with me having him visit one of his classes to observe him in action. So last week, when I was cleaning up his old laptop, it was a pleasant surprise to find a video of him lecturing his students on sustainable architecture as it relates to climate change. I wish I could tell him how impressive and eloquent he was with his delivery. I was blown away. I believe it was Jim's intellect as well as his strong spiritual practice that sustained him throughout his illness. He was a serious meditator, and he became skilled in Qigong, which was beneficial to his health before becoming seriously ill. I believe his teacher is here today. I met Jim in the early 1990s when I took a risk and went alone on a Potomac Appalachian Trail Club weekend 2 hours away in Virginia's mountains. I asked 3 other people to go with me. Everybody turned me down. And as I was driving through the rain, I thought, this is nuts. But so Jim and I ended up on the same hike. It was 6 people. I was the only female. They ranged from age 32 to 80, and Jim was one of those. Among other things, I was taken with his kindness and his voice. I've often thought, what if I hadn't gone on that hike, on that weekend? He asked me a lot of questions as we hiked, including about my relationship with my stepchildren from my first marriage, because, as I learned later, his kids were extremely important to him. If I had done it before, maybe I could do it again. We had many outdoor adventures together, which Jim always planned in great detail. The Grand Canyon, the high peaks in Yosemite, the Southwest, canoeing in Minnesota's boundary waters, touring in Canada and Iceland, and more. That last photo in the slideshow was Jim in the high peaks carrying more than his share as we hiked, food, tent, etc. Jim was a huge supporter of my landscape photography. I recently created a large book of my best photos and dedicated to him. This inscription says it all. Jim continually expanded my horizons and patiently supported all aspects of my photography. He researched and planned many of our photo adventures, skillfully critiqued my images, and so much more. Jim was my soulmate, and we had great respect for each other. I believe we each empowered the other in very positive ways. We had the same values, the same worldview, and liked many of the same things, music, food, and more. I gained so much from Jim's wisdom. He changed my life, and I'm a better person for having known him, and I carry that forth. As my friend said, he wasn't a man afraid of saying, I love you. This is an example of the many supportive notes I received from him over the years. Written on Christmas Day in 2020, this is significant because he was well into his serious illness. My dear friend, this is to express my deep, deep gratitude for finding you on that wet and cold mountaintop and profiting from your depth, wisdom and beauty ever since. You give me far more wisdom, health, and life than if I missed you. My karma paid off. I win. There are more accolades, but I'll leave it at that. Jim had a very generous spirit, giving spirit, and was egalitarian in his dealings with others. And here's some examples. He had great respect for women, and when possible, he chose women doctors and service workers. He felt they often were more intuitive, knowledgeable, and empathetic. He respected my intuition and consulted me regularly on a wide variety of issues. While ill, he made me research various women in the military and elsewhere. He'd often say, woman power. He'd say, you know, I know you're busy, but would you mind looking up on your phone this person or that person? So it often was about women. Once it was obvious his illness was serious, Jim made amends to a couple people. One involved a situation in which he didn't follow through with something he said he'd do for a lead person in a sustainable community. To die with clear conscience, he sent the woman a sizable check. During his illness, he created a list of dates for those who should be acknowledged or remembered. Birthdays, anniversaries, the date we met, my first husband's birthday and date of death, and our beloved cat Chato's date of death. And he would sometimes write cards to me or others about the things, the occasions. Jim was devoted to his family members, and he accepted my kids and grandkids as his own, and you probably saw some of that in the photos. Jim had various wise expressions which he applied to his life, and I subsequently applied to mine. So I call these Jimisms, whatever. Hold not to fixed views. First, take care of yourself, then take care of others. Don't second guess yourself. Use skillful means in your dealings with others. Don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. Don't throw pearls in front of swine. If you don't have expectations, you won't be disappointed. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. May all sentient beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Jim was an amazing human being. As a former neighbor said, there will only be one Jim. So I want to read only part of a poem that is in your material, We Remember Them. And I'm reading it because it's really special to me. I came across it about 5 years at a friend's memorial service, and I've seen it elsewhere since then. It's rather popular, so maybe you've seen it. But it really touched my heart. So although I'll only read the first couple lines and then skip to the middle and read to the end, take time later to read it all. At the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. We remember all who have left us in recent years, including Jim, but also Julian, Reza, Cam, David, Dick, Jeff, Steve, Sybil, Ureki, Harry, BJ, Joyce, Lynn, and unnamed others. We always will remember them. Thank you.
In the late 1990s, after Fran's son Matt had been a Buddhist monk in Burma, Jim became interested in Theravada Buddhism, the Buddhism of Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. He had made a great study of it. His study included participating in a Friday night class on Buddhist texts, which I facilitated at a DC Buddhist temple. Jim was in the class for more than a decade, and he helped facilitate the class after I had moved to Western Maryland. Jim came to class after a full day, sometimes an exhausting day at work. Even after Fran and he had moved from Bethesda to Reston, Jim came to class. He was, of course, a smart, sincere, serious, fully engaged participant with a sense of humor. He was prepared, having previously read and reflected on the text to be discussed that evening. He took many detailed notes and frequently asked questions. I can hear him even now in his mild Southern accent saying, "Excuse me, just one thing. Michael, if you don't mind, may I ask a question? Before we go on." He was a gentle gentleman, a model of politeness and consideration for others. He had a library of many books on Buddhism, and he looked to Buddhism for spiritual and moral guidance. Jim was also a devoted meditator and meditated for 1 hour every day. He attended many meditation retreats. He meditated at centers in West Virginia, California, Washington State, Maryland, and Virginia. At the Forest Dhamma Monastery in Lexington, Virginia, Jim designed a lighting system for the monastery's meditation hall, which enhanced the quality of light on a jade Buddha carved in Thailand and shipped to that remote mountain location. He kept voluminous notes from his retreats. Jim believed in walking the talk, or as he put it, orthopraxy rather than orthodoxy. He had another expression: take what you want and leave the rest. In short, Jim led his life by Buddhist principles. These include mindfulness, wisdom, compassion, joy in the well-being of others, patience, nonviolence, perseverance, tranquility, and much more. He was always seeking understanding. He was always acting out of loving kindness, or as he called it, loving friendliness. He noted he was grateful that he never had to harm anyone when he was in the military. In fact, his favorite Buddhist text is called the Discourse on Loving Kindness, Karaniya Metta Sutta, or as he called it, loving friendliness. As I go through it, notice the mentioned virtues and the practice that were characteristic of Jim. So this is the sutta. It's also in your materials. This is what should be done by one skilled in goodness and who seeks the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with the duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies, and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this mindfulness. This is said to be the sublime abiding. This discourse is so very Jim. And it is and reading it is a very good way to remember him and keep him in our lives. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dan Cusick, and I came to know Jim quite late in life and under circumstances that I don't believe either of us would have expected. We met in a 12-step room, and we saw one another across a room of like kind, and it took some time to actually speak to Jim, and then after speaking to Jim, getting to know him. As has been said, he was efficient in his life, and it was clear that he kept his plate totally full, but not overflowing, that he would not be able to give 100% and more to whatever it was that he was doing. As has been said, his intellect was beyond belief. He taught me so much, and I'd like to share a few items of anecdotal events that some of you may not know about. Jim expressed very clearly that the people in his life were most important, that he devoted his time, his energy, his focus on peaceful existence with everyone and for everyone. His Buddhism practice was absolutely exemplary. I knew little about it when I met him. I would speak with him. He would be most open, and he would provide resources to understand the kindness and the loving kindness that he showed to everyone whom he met. He was certainly private, and even to the extent that my wife has said, don't use this example. He and I would have lunch on occasion, and he had related during our lunch that he had a health issue. Nothing serious. It was okay. It was passing. We both happened to have to go to the restroom at the same time. And the men in the room will recall standing next to one another. And I took the opportunity of pressing the point of, well, Jim, just how serious is this issue for you? And I guess he felt cornered, and he shared more than he would have otherwise, I believe. A similar experience of Jim's to evidence his gentle nature and his kindness. He had another occasion when he needed to go to a bathroom. He was walking back from a meeting, and might have well been one of his Buddhist teachings. and was near a large federal building and needed to relieve himself. And he walked over to a bush and made a very cautious military type of reconnoitering of no one around, no one here, it won't offend anybody. And he stepped off the curb into the bushes and stepped back out, and there was a police officer who asked him, "What exactly are you doing?" Jim's honesty certainly came forward, and he said, "I needed to relieve myself. I have a condition." And the officer said, "Well, what is your condition?" And he said, "I had to pee." Direct, simple, straightforward, efficient. Jim provided such an example of strength, such an example of deep, deep respect for others. Jim spoke with a friend of his at one time who had lost his son, and the fellow was lamenting that the son passed at a young age. It was 12-step type of circumstances, and Jim listened very carefully. And the message was that this young man came to the earth, left the earth. Who would ever know other than the young man's family? Every birthday and every anniversary of that young man's birth and passing, Jim either called, sent a text, sent an email, sent a card. And when asked, "Jim, how do you do this?" And he simply said, "I keep a calendar of important dates, just as Fran identified." And that's the extraordinary depth of Jim's compassion for humans, compassion and respect for humans, great and small, and all living beings.
It's always remarkable to hear so many stories about someone you know in one way and to see how many orbits his orbit crossed. If that's the measure of a rich life, then Jim was Midas without the greed. So my name is Milton Schinberg. I'm an architect and I'm a teacher, and my path crossed Jim's and gave me the great pleasure of knowing him for over 40 years. In my own life, like yours, I've met thousands of people and had serious conversations with quite a few, but truly meaningful and memorable friendships with far, far fewer. My friendship with Jim was and has been one of those that held the deepest meaning. I've also learned over all these years that Jim's expansive orbit brought that special privilege to many. It was their good fortune as it was mine. So I first met Jim when he taught at Catholic University in the 1980s. I got there a couple years before. He managed 32 wonderful years of teaching. Among other contributions, he launched a new course about sustainable design in architecture, not as a series of technical strategies alone, but as an essential part of our responsibilities as architects and an absolute necessity for saving our planetary home. His warnings were early and accurately dire, and we have ignored them at our enormous peril. His mission at Catholic, and it certainly felt like a mission, was to steer students toward using their considerable talents and their energies for the benefit of humanity, and then giving them specific and actionable tools, useful tools for doing just that. Everything that Jim put time and effort into had to be true, and it had to be important, and it had to be doable. Not just as a theory, but something that would be effective today and effective tomorrow. He inculcated all of us with ways of thinking that could carry smart and enlivening building far into the future. He was the perfect teacher. I've seen so many people teach, but no one quite as good as Jim. He was clear, he was steady, he was tough, he was demanding without being harsh, he was wise and polite. He was a gentleman. He was not always a gentle man, but he was always kind in his directness. It was obvious that he thought carefully and calmly before he spoke, that pausing mattered because words matter, that he was respectful of each student's time and attention. He spoke beautifully. We all know that. But he also truly listened to them and to our delicate planet as well and as much. And for all these reasons, his students did truly love him, and they still do. I've heard virtually the same report from so many about his imprint on them and their careers, but also on their lives. I know it was hard to devote this energy to teaching while deeply enmeshed in careers, and now we find deeply enmeshed in Buddhism as well. I don't know how he did it, but I do know how hard it is to devote this kind of energy to teaching while so enmeshed. That we had that in common, and we commiserated about it, and we encouraged and supported each other. So he saw a problem at Catholic University. He saw a need, and he challenged the school. Being Jim, he was very direct. So together with another dedicated colleague, Barry Yacht, who's here with us today, we were appointed the school's technology task force, very formal, and we developed our case for curricular changes. But what made our case both credible and more profoundly relevant was Jim's leadership. As always, his stature just walked with him. He made our overarching message clear that good architecture was a synthesis of many things, of which technology was but one of those things. He said that truly good architecture was, first and foremost, humane and inspiring and comprehensively intelligent, and with the investment of real talent, even beautiful. So Barry and I continued to get together with Jim after he had finished his teaching years. We were surprised and concerned when he didn't answer our last attempt to get in touch. A phone call from Fran brought us the news of Jim's condition. To learn that he was so ill was a terrible shock. The never imagined idea that Jim could leave us never crossed our mind. Everybody does, but somehow his departure from this life never occurred to us. The part that wasn't shocking at all was Fran's report that he was facing his inevitable end with complete equanimity. He will be remembered and will continue to inspire architecture students for years to come. Barry and I created the James Binkley Prize for the final design studio at Catholic University, the capstone studio. It's called the Integrated Building Design Studio, and it is truly an integrated project. It's a perfect venue to celebrate Jim's dedication to a synthesis of all the critical elements of design. A distinguished jury at the end of each of the spring semester just held, comprised of architects who reflect Jim's values, and I happened to be able to nominate the ones who did, and they were exemplary. They chose the best, most comprehensively solid, thoughtful projects to receive awards. This year's jury was a success, and students will receive prizes as a result of a fund that's been created in Jim's honor and now memory. So this year is for many years to come. As funding allows, the James Binkley Prize will continue to be about him and his values. A former student, John Pendorf, who's with us today, now a national leader in sustainable architecture, and wrote the following, and it's a perfect tribute, and as evidence of Jim's impact, the best way to conclude. His awareness of how the built and natural environments needed to intertwine is what propelled me deep into sustainability from thesis in school through present practice. A few years ago, I ran into Jim and his wife at an AIA DC Fellows dinner, and to my surprise, he lit up when seeing me. I was shocked he remembered me, one of literally thousands of students he taught. He was excited to talk about a summit he was helping organize, and I got a chance to tell him how seminal his instruction had been in my life. He took the compliments in stride and quickly turned the conversation back to what I wanted to see happen at the summit. But that was Jim, so passionate about sustainable architecture, but also passionate about the people who created. That was Jim. He'd like to tell his protégés that it was an honor to know us, something he said in his typically loving way. I can tell you, and without reservation, that the honor was and remains ours. We will miss him deeply, we already do, but we will carry his spirit forward with us.
And Stephen Spurlock.
Good morning. I'm here today to speak about Jim's professional life and his many wonderful accomplishments as an architect. And as Fran alluded to, Jim did design this service, and Fran expressed to me that, to take a little deeper dive and give you a little more of a background about, so this may seem a little dry and a little bit, into the weeds a little bit, but I wanted to, give you an opportunity to touch on how many different things he accomplished in his life. Jim graduated from 2 universities, I'm not sure how many people are aware of that, in the late 60s with multiple degrees, and after a military service, which you've heard about already, began a working career which included nearly 40 years of active practice as an architect and an educator. His first employment was with AIA Gold Medal winner Pietro Bellusci in Boston. Understanding the greater impact he could have with his many skills, Jim left this firm as a licensed architect and entered government service in 1974 and served in various positions until his retirement in 2009. These positions include architect for the General Services Administration from 1974 to 1978, chief and manager AE Systems for the U.S. Department of Energy, 1978 to 1985, and manager and senior architect at the U.S. Postal Service from 1985 until his retirement in 2009. Jim's career is noted for his service on a national level and as a passionate champion of design excellence, sustainable design, and cost effectiveness, which you've heard about from others already. Jim did not enter government service just for a job and to be told what to do. In each of these positions he held, he looked for opportunities to enhance design and sustainability and took the initiative to create new programs where none existed to address deficiencies he found. At the GSA, Jim created the National Design Award Program and the Post-Occupancy Evaluation Program, programs that live to this day and impact the entire federal government. While at DOE, Jim led the development of the National Energy Standards for Buildings and DEO Technology Transfer Program. These standards became mandatory for all federal buildings worldwide, and the DOE work still serves as the authoritative source on the design of low-energy facilities. A highlight of Jim's service at the Postal Service was the development of the National Kit of Parts program. This program standardized Postal Service operations, created national postal building design standards, and impacted the construction of facilities at over 29,000 locations. Every time you walk into a post office, a little bit Jim is there looking at you. Trust me. As you heard from Milton, Jim was also an active educator and served on the faculty of Catholic University for over 30 years. Always generous with his time, Jim mentored both students and generations of young architects, many who have become today's leaders of our profession. Jim is a sought-after speaker. His presentations span decades and championed design excellence and sustainability. Jim authored numerous articles and publications, including Building Standards, many still in use today. Jim is the national leader in the profession. During his career, he chaired several national AIA committees, including the Committee on the Environment, the AIA Public Architects Knowledge Committee, and the National Academy's Federal Facilities Council. This extensive volunteer work touched most of the profession and meaningfully impacted the built environment. You know, and in listening to all the other, I don't know how he had time to do all this, you know, I mean, as Milton and others and Dan have said, the man was so incredibly complex, and so I didn't know, I'm learning, you know, today things that I never knew before. Jim's work was awarded and recognized by many organizations, but his two most prized recognition were his elevation to the AIA College of Fellows in 2000 and the 2011 Thomas Jefferson Award for Excellence in Public Architecture. And to give you some idea of what this is all about, the AIA College of Fellows was created about 75 years ago to recognize architects that have made outstanding contributions to the profession, the built environment, and the public on a national level. Other than the AIA Gold Medal, which is annually given to one individual, it is the highest honor the Institute bestows on a member. Only about 3% of the members of the AIA are fellows, about 3,000 architects nationwide. The selection project is arduous and requires support from peers and election by an annual national jury of fellows. The Thomas Jefferson Award, now called the Award for Excellence in Public Architecture, is a national AIA award annually presented to one or two individuals for outstanding contributions to public architecture. Jim's considerable body of work made this award a natural. While I knew of Jim from his reputation, we first became friends when we served on a national AIA awards jury in 2012. I was an AIA national board director at the time and chaired the jury. Jim participated as the prior year Jefferson awardee. We became fast friends and maintained a close relationship until his passing. About 7 years ago, Jim and I joined a group of fellows to create a new AIA DC Fellows Committee focused on public programs and outreach. True to character, Jim took the lead in organizing many of our events, especially our annual dinner, speaking opportunities, and ways to honor and network with the different members of our community. The committee's most important endeavor has been the creation of an endowment to fund scholarships for deserving DC high school graduates to attend a university to study architecture. As part of his legacy, he has asked for donations in his name to be given to that fund administered by the Washington Architectural Foundation. Please feel free to contact me for more information, but there is, Fran kindly put a link to the fund in the program that you have with you today. And in Jim's honor, I encourage you to make a contribution. I'm truly honored to have been part of Jim's life, and I miss him very much. A kinder, more thoughtful man would be hard to find. describing him as a man who was always giving, always listening, always asking questions to learn about others, rather than talking about himself would not begin to do him full justice. Each year at the fellowship investiture ceremony, new fellows are asked to take a pledge to be of ever-increasing service to society. Jim's life was the embodiment of that charge. His passing is our loss. We cherish our memories of Jim and are grateful that he was part of our lives. Thank you.
And Jessica.
Good afternoon. Dearest Dad, I come here today to write this letter and convey my sadness, grief, joy, acceptance, and peace. Part of me hates that I am here to honor your life, because we are also here honoring your death. I did not want you to leave, because you are that special. What are some of the things that make you so special? Growing up, Dad, you had it rough. And I know that was really painful and confusing. But you had a strength and a wisdom in your spirit that allowed you to overcome these challenges and create a beautiful, precious, and meaningful life that was unique and special for you. Dad, I could go on and on about your accomplishments in your career that meant the world to you, and the impact this had on such important issues, such as the environment. You were way ahead of your time. But what I really want to talk about is your spirit and why you are so special. Dad, you are so intelligent, my God. I could ask you about any topic, and you would actually know the answers to so many subjects. It was unbelievable. I could always learn so much from you. Your presence was just a joy to be around. You have a love and a kindness about you that for those that had the ability to appreciate you, your friendship, and your attention, it was a treasure and a gift. Dad, boy, are you an adventurous spirit. There is nothing boring about you. Whether it was creating these unique adventures and exploring the world, like driving through a minivan through Alaska and hanging out with grizzly bears, or taking your wife on these amazing trips to support her photography, or creating these adventures and experiences with your grandchildren, connecting with the Civil War. I could go on and on about the life you lived to the absolute fullest and created beauty and enjoyment everywhere you went. I bared witness to the depths of your spiritual life and how your journey with meditation and the path your heart led you to follow transformed your life and impacted others. It was a privilege to know the intimacy of your spiritual life and meditation and the retreats and the impact Qigong had on your life. Dad, it was in those little details, day after day, moment after moment, how each decision you would make, you wanted it to be from a place of love, wisdom, and kindness. And finally, your spirit was so gentle that I remember many times in my life feeling that I wanted to protect you. However, as I matured and grew in my life, I began to see that you didn't need that at all. You were truly one of the strongest, wisest people that I have ever known. I thank you for everything you gave to all of us. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the warm rays of the sun fall upon your home, and may the hand of a friend always be near. May green be the grass you walk on. May blue be the skies above you. May pure be the joys that surround you. May true be the hearts that love you. Thank you.
So we've heard a great deal about Jim, but now is the time in our service for other things that need to be said this morning to be spoken. I have a microphone. Does anybody else from the family wish to speak? Yes. Do I need to push this, Amanda? Amelia? Doesn't seem to be. It's red. Use the pulpit.
Hi, my name is John. I'm one of Jim's sons. I'm here with my wife, Jen, Jim's daughter-in-law, one of them. Jim's grandsons, Luke and Levi, two of them. We have also two formerly foster and now godsons, Carter and David, that my dad was equally instrumental in their lives. Who, if they were here with us, you would know they were here. We reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. My dad, as you've heard, was truly a remarkable man. As a father, he could not have been more encouraging or supportive. He made me feel like I could accomplish anything. I'm going to miss that. He was incredibly loving, empathetic, and he was always there for me and my siblings. I always knew he was always in my corner. I always knew he always had my back, no matter what. As a grandfather, he was completely dialed in to Luke and Levi's lives. We've heard this about my dad. He was a truly intelligent man, wildly intelligent man, and a deep intellectual. And so anything that these guys were into from birth to now their ages 22 and 19, he would thoroughly study and research and become a subject matter expert in so he could connect with them in a deep level, ranging from football to Fortnite, adventure sports to ancestry, and mountain climbing to Star Wars. These guys' childhood highlights that they will talk about for the rest of their lives included the biannual Granddad Adventures that ranged from climbing mountains to Binkley ancestral roots expeditions, and even, this I guess can be mentioned now, illegally on many occasions visiting historical and archaeological sites, to name a few. He was a true Indiana Jones in many ways. As a man, we've heard about this today, my dad was the epitome of a compassionate, servant leader who always put others above and before himself. He was kind to all. He overflowed and exuded with positive energy, and he diligently sought to find common ground and understanding with those of differing perspectives and opinions than his. Something much needed in this world. Some of the attributes that my dad possessed, and this is not exhaustive, that I strive to emulate each and every day as a man and a father, are his resilience, his grit. He never quit. He never surrendered. He never gave up during life's struggles. His mindset. My dad chose to be a victor instead of a victim when faced with life's challenges. His humility. My dad never took himself too seriously. He was a lifelong learner and was one of the most altruistic, other-focused men I have ever known. His integrity. My dad always did the right thing. Like Dan shared when he needed to take care of a medical issue, it sounds like, in a bush in D.C., even to his own detriment. His love. My dad always told me and his grandkids and his children how much he loved us. And he showed me and my siblings and grandchildren this each and every time he was with us. He did walk the talk. And he loved us and demonstrated this in countless ways. He truly loved his family and his friends and his fellow man. And my dad's drive, you see it in each one of his children and stepchildren. My dad passionately pursued personal excellence each day, always striving to be the best version of himself he could be in mind, body, and spirit, right up until his dying day. I miss you, Dad, and I love you. You were a remarkable dad, granddad, and man, and I am honored to be your son. Thank you.
What else needs to be said this morning? Now we're in the afternoon. This guy's so wonderful. Yes, sir, come forward, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be very brief. We are all born radiant and pure. Few of us keep sight of that in our moment-to-moment existence. When I saw the bluebirds visiting us this morning, landing on the sill, it reminded me of Jim, looking in on us and reminding us that that radiance and purity is here in our heart. Few people can keep the radiance and purity that we're born with in our hearts present in our moment-to-moment existence. Jim was one of those people.
Please, come on up. Grandson number one. You passed along the tallest, James. I got this.
Hi, my name is Levi, and I'm one of the grandsons. When I think of my granddad, there's so many things I can talk about and so many things that could just go on, and memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. But I think one of the most impactful things in my own life is just his intentionalness with us. And as I sit here in the front listening to all these stories from his life, from his incredible accomplishments to his own spiritual journey, he was a very, very busy man. But despite that, he always took time out of his own life to pour into us. And he would research my interests, whatever they were, whether they were a common interest or not, he would dive into them. And I know he was a wonderful college professor, not because I sat under him in his college classroom, but because he poured that same skills he had as a professor into my own life. In preparation for some of our hiking trips, he would give me homework assignments, lectures, and he basically created a whole curriculum just for me. And, that intentionalness he poured in is something that I just will forever remember. And it doesn't just stop there. From our mountain expeditions to our Civil War history, where we illegally trespassed into many sites, tracing back our ancestors, he served as an amazing role model for me. But even in the simplest things, like despite all of that, just coming home, sitting on the couch with me, drinking a root beer, and watching Star Wars. That intentional desire he had and passionate love for me is something that I will never forget. And as I grow older, I hope just to emulate that and just be half the man he was, because that is something that just forever sticks with me. Thank you.
Sure.
Get the Jim's hype, but thankfully that guy's incredibly good looks, which I'm very thankful for. This has been so cool just getting to hear from all you guys and to hear about what my grandfather's life. I didn't know so many things, and I learned so many cool things today about his life and just the the person he was, the man he was, and the impact he made in this world. And that's just so cool because I feel the same way for myself. I was so blessed to have him as a grandfather. And I could go on and talking about how all of you guys are saying about how much of a good work ethic he had, how intellectual he was, or how it was so cool how he was able to overcome a rough childhood and rough upbringing and just become a super successful person. But the thing that meant the most to me about my grandfather was just the compassion and the love that he had for me and just others around the world. And he would just constantly pour into my life. He would just want to know what's going on, just try to make sure that he really cared and was intentional about me, and for that I'll be forever thankful. So I'm extremely proud to be his grandson, and I really hope that I can take all the love and compassion and all the things he's in his life and can emulate that moving forward. So, thank you.
Frederick Buechner, a Presbyterian theologian, once wrote, "When you remember me, it means that you have carried something of who I am with you, that I have left some mark of who I am on who you are. It means I can summon you back to your mind, even though countless years and miles may stand between us. And it means that if we meet again, you will know me. It means that even after I die, you can still see my face and hear my voice and speak to me in your heart. For as long as you remember me, I am not entirely lost." And this closing reading from poet Daphne Rose Kingman. It is love that fashions us into the fullness of our being, not our looks, not our work, not our wants, not our achievements, not our parents, not our status, not even our dreams. These are all the fodder and the filler, the navigating fuels of our lives. But it is love, who we love, how we love, why we love, and that we love, which ultimately shapes us. It is love before all and after all, in the beginning and in the end, that creates us. Today, remembering this, let yourself acknowledge and remember the moments, events, and people who bring you, even momentarily, a true experience of love. And allow the rest and the inescapable mundities of life, like a cloud, to quietly drift away. It is done. We have this morning bid our loving farewell to Jim Binkley. His body has been committed to the purifying flame and will be laid to rest here in Reston in a natural setting at a later time. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We are profoundly glad that he lived. We are glad that we saw his face and felt the glow of his friendship and companionship and love, and we cherish the memory of his words and deeds and shining character. Carrying him thus in our hearts, let us go from this place in comfort and peace, assured that even in this time of loss and sorrow, life remains this precious, holy gift which we are charged to live, as Jim did, as best we can every day, as compassionately, as peacefully, as decently. Go in peace, and may the Spirit of God in life go with all of you. Our postlude.
Maya Suki